Welcome back. In this section or in this lecture, we will learn about the introduction to talent and different talent architecture types. So on the right side, you will see different products that are being offered by Talend. Most of them you might know, like data integration and big data integration, or data preparation, data catalog, data quality, master data management, and others. So all these products or solutions, you can name it whatever you want, offer the opportunity to work cooperatively on various projects, whether it might be data integration or big data integration. You can work cooperatively with, like you can have these and work on the other project, but remember, based on the license type, you will have these products enabled once you install Talend. And this collaboration or this collaborative work is handled by or via Talend Administration Console or Talend Administration Center. And as I said, you will also manage 90% of your administration tasks from Talend Administration Center. So it is very important to learn what is Talend Administration Center. So what does this Talend Administration Center exactly do and what it is? We will learn about that in coming lectures, but let's see what at a high end or high level what it does. Talend Administration Center, it allows manage operating and connection information, administrative projects, or manage users and licenses, schedule deployment and rollout processes of jobs. We will go in depth into each of these in the coming lectures, but at a high level, you should know TAC does all of the following. So this is a picture. It might not be clear, so I will open another picture, but this is divided into different functionalities. In this section, you will see the client tools, and here you will see servers, and in the bottom you will see execution servers and repositories on the top, and databases on the right, and what it is called store task MongoDB. This is for TDS stewardship on the right. So these are, we will go in depth into each section. As you can see on the left side, it is divided into client, server, repositories, and databases. So I zoomed in this picture. Let's go first the left side, the client. This includes one or more Studio APIs and web browsers. Here you are only seeing Studio, but there are other Studio APIs. The GUI version is called Talend Studio, and the non-GUI version we have another API. We will learn more about it in the one of the section. And here you will see a Studio API and browser, and this can be on the same machine, either of this, both of these, or they can be on different machines. For example, the laptop you will be working on, this can be on, one can be on the laptop, one can be on the server, it can be in any other machine, it doesn't matter. From the Studio API, a user, he might be a Talend developer or administrator. In my case, I am both. I do both the jobs as a developer or administrator. Talend, that's how it works. Most of the time you will be a developer, and you at the same time you will perform administrative tasks. If you have a team of 5 people, and most of the time lead will be doing the administrative tasks. So from the Studio API, an user, he can carry out technical processes, for example like data integration processes, which we call them jobs, or data services processes, which we call name services, or mediation routes. From the Studio, jobs, services, and routes can be published onto Nexus Artifact Repository that you can see here. This is the arrow that is showing that you can publish it from here into the Nexus Artifact Repository. But what exactly is an artifact repository? Well, artifacts are nothing but the jobs, but they are not in the raw state, in the compiled state. So an artifact will have compiled code of your job, and it will have all the jobs that are required to run that job. So you can use that artifact and run it on any machine. You don't need Talend. That machine don't have to have Talend. If it has Java, that's good enough for it. So that's an artifact. So you can publish your job from the studio onto artifact repository, Nexus Artifact Repository. And then the studio also allow the user to work on projects for which he has authorization for, obviously, right? There might be n number of projects, but you can give a user access to only a set of those projects, not all the projects. So where do you control that? Obviously on Talend Administration Center. And who controls it? The Talend Administrator. We will see how to do that from TAC later on, but whatever access you give it for a particular role, only those projects are visible in the studio. And coming to the web browser, a user, whether it might be a developer or an administrator based on his role, he connects to this remotely based administration center through a secured HTTP protocol. You don't have to worry about the protocols, but behind the scenes from the browser on using the HTTP protocol, it is connected. And next, coming to the Talend servers and the database section, right? You can see servers here and the database here, and you will also see Git or SVN, doesn't matter, whatever. And before going there, you can see Studio has another link to tag check authorization, which means when you log into Studio, if you are logging into a remote project, obviously it will check the username password you are giving on tag. So that's why you see an arrow from here. And from browser you will see administrator monitor, because if you are a developer, you can go log into tag and see read-only mode, whatever project you are authorized to, related tasks or execution plans, and you can capture logs from there. And you can also monitor based on your roles. That's why you have an arrow here. So those are the two arrows for Studio. One goes here, one goes there, and here it goes two, because from the Studio you can store your jobs onto Git or SVN, and at the same time you can publish onto Artifact Repository. That's why you have two arrows going from there. And now going into the server section and the database section, you can see and you can see an SVN or Git here, which includes web-based administration center, which is nothing but an application server, right? TAC. So the database you are seeing here, this is for MDM and this is for data quality. So based on the license or the products you are using, you will have all this. For example, if you are having a Talend data integration platform or that Talend big data platform, you won't have MDM or data quality. You will have just the admin database. So what is this admin database? We'll see in a minute. But those are the things you have. Then we have two shared repositories here, as you can see, which will go from TAC. One, it is going up, and you will see this is a repository which is Git or SVN, and again you will have another repository which is a database. So TAC, you can see right side arrow goes there and up arrow goes into that, and down we have execution servers, but we'll see one at a time, right? And what does the Talend administration does? It will enable the management and administration of all the projects. So you will see the administration metadata, for example, user accounts, access rights, project authorizations, all these are stored in a database behind TAC, which is this, which you call admin database. As you can see it here, this is all those are stored on this database server. Whereas the project metadata, for example, like the jobs, routes, business models, routines, services, all are stored in a Git or SVN repository or server to easily share them between different users. For example, if there are 5 people in the team, you might be working on some jobs, another developer might be working on another job. So how do you share it? Using a Git repository. So that you will use the Git or SVN repository. So, and this also shows, maybe you are wondering, we have Talend Administration Center, we have NDM here, we have TDP, which is data preparation, TDS, data stewardship, and dictionary. So again, as I said, depending on the license you have and the products you are using, you will have all this, but the basic data integration or big data platform, it won't have these 3 and that. You will only have Talend Administration Console. So that's our, and the installation I'm going to do don't have this as part of my license, so I will be talking more about this. And you also have a server side tool called IAM, Identity Access Management. If you already have this on your system or you want to use that, you have to install it, which we won't be doing it, where you can manage your SSO authentications. Okay, so that being said, and if you go down, you will see something called execution servers. So when I say execution server, it constitutes 2, the job servers and Talend Runtime. So maybe you don't know what they are, we'll go through. And also this is the time to talk about Talend Nexus Artifact Repository, which we already discussed, but this will go along with these 2. So the Artifact Repository, again, this is involved in publishing jobs, web services or REST services or data services, and also mediation routes, which are created in the studio as we discussed earlier. You will create all those here and then publish it to here, right? Or not just those, and also any other Java IDE, and execution server is involved in deploying and executing these artifacts. So you publish them onto artifact repository, but this only stores them, but you need to execute them. That's where the execution servers come into picture. So you will deploy these artifacts onto the execution server, and then you execute them. So the Nexus here, it represents the artifact repository that stores all the jobs, routes, services which are published from the studio and are ready to be deployed and executed in the execution server, which is right here. That's why, you know, that goes there and to and fro. Okay, and then we have this, as we discussed, represents the servers, execution servers that actually run the technical processes, which are jobs and routes, according to the execution scheduling that we set up on the Talend Administration Center, which is again a web application, as we discussed. So these execution servers can be 2 types. One is a job server and another is the runtime. So you can have 1 or more Talend runtimes, which are nothing but the containers. So what do you mean by container? So a runtime is nothing but you have an artifact. It will create a container specifically for that purpose. If you know Hadoop, you can relate it a little. So some runtime containers will be running, and you can deploy that particular artifact on that runtime alone. So each artifact will have only 1 runtime container. So in a project, you can have 1 or more Talend runtimes, which are deployed inside, your information system. So these Talend runtimes, they deploy and execute the jobs, routes, and services, which are retrieved from, obviously, from the artifact repository here. And according to whatever setup defined in our administration center via the web application, we will see how to do those in detail once we set up the tag. And if we have more than 1 Talend runtimes on which to deploy these so-called artifacts, we can load balance them. We can load balance their execution according to the project needs. All these instances of Talend runtime will communicate between each other via something called service locator. Why do we need to do that? Again, in order to identify the one more likely to deploy and execute the artifact set to deployment, right? So again, if you know Hadoop, it's kind of similar to Hadoop, where you do load balancing, or if you know AWS, even there we have load balancing, right? Load balancing is a general topic where depending on your loads, it will decide where to execute exactly. Here, depending on that, it will decide which runtime container it should use for whatever the deployment it was scheduled on Talend Administration Center. And based on that, the Talend runtime elected for the deployment will obviously, it will request the artifact from the artifact repository, and it will also request with it all the dependencies needed for their execution on the Talend runtime, and then it will deploy and execute them. That's simple, right? And then we have job servers. You can have one or more job servers, and you can load balance them too by something called creating virtual servers that we will see later in the TAC. And the difference between runtime and job server is runtime, you can only each run the container will request only one artifact, whereas the job servers, you can run all your artifacts on the job server. So you will deploy them onto them first in order to run the technical process, which are jobs according to the scheduled time. We will see how to schedule according to a time or date or event. We will see all of them in the Talend Administration Center. So according to that, they will be deployed and run on Talend Administration Center. So now you see the importance of Talend Administration Center. So because all of these are done on Talend Administration Center. And then so we have seen that this section, we are done with this section. We know what this section does, and we also know this section. So now let's see about this section, right? So here you see we know what this does. This is a database which stores users, rights, roles, everything. And we have this audit database. This is an optional one. You can set it up. If you followed what's covered in this course, we have something called auditing projects. In order to do that, you need to set up a database, and all those metadata will be stored on this database, and then you can monitor the auditing, or you can audit those. And the important one here we're going to discuss is the monitoring of this, which is activity monitoring database, or you can, so you will use this for AMC, which is activity monitoring console, and there is another thing called SAM, which is service activity monitoring, which we won't be seeing in this course, the SAM, because my license doesn't allow that. So again, important thing to note is some items you might be seeing on TAC and some you might not be. Don't get surprised, because it depends on your license type. So let's talk about the activity monitoring console. It doesn't show it clearly that, but let's assume we have both AMC and SAM here. So let's talk about the activity monitoring console, right? What does it do? It allows the users to monitor the execution of technical processes. Simple. It provides detailed monitoring capabilities that can be used to consolidate the collected log information. Obviously, we have to collect the logs, which is where this database come into place. You can also collect those logs into files, but you cannot use that to monitor. You have to have a database to monitor it. So how to set that up? What are the different log types? We'll discuss in the section AMC in detail. And you can also use this to understand the underlying data flows, interaction, prevent falls that could be unexpectedly generated, which is like you can monitor each and every job component, how much data it is taking in, taking out, which component is failing a lot, and you can use all that to support these system management decisions, right? And then we have SIM, which is service activity monitoring, that allows the users to monitor service calls, right? It provides monitoring and consolidated event information that the user can use to understand the underlying requests and replies that compose the event, monitor falls that may be unexpectedly generated, and support the system management decisions. This is similar to AMC, but in that case it is technical processes. In here it is to monitor the service calls. That's the only difference. So that's the entire architecture or the tools that are involved in Talend. But since currently now you know how these play in a role, let me explain you in a real time how they set up, right? So as a client, you will have the Studio and web browser, and you will have Talend Administration Center. And while you install Talend Administration Center, you will set up the database for this, and these two are optional. You can have the if you want audit enabled, you will install a database. If you want the monitoring, you will install another database. So, and then you will have one or more Git repositories. Either you will go with Git or SVN depending on whatever your company have. And then you will have the Nexus Artifact Repository to store artifacts. So what happens in a project is the developer develops the jobs in the studio by connecting to a Git repository, right? Git or SVN repository, so that you can collaborate between your team members. So developers will be working in the studio on the Git. Mostly you will have master branch and other branches, so the developer will be developing on other branches. Once the code is developed and tested on development, then he will let the lead know that he's done, he's ready to move the code to the QA. So if you have a business analyst, you will let the business analyst know. Then you will let the code migration team, or if it is your lead who does that, you will let him know. Then he will review the code. Once he says okay, look, code looks good, the results look good, then he will push the changes to the master repository. So here comes the CI/CD, which is continuous integration and deployment. If you have that in your company, then from there CI/CD will take care of it. Otherwise we have to do it manually. So assuming we are doing it manually, and if you want to know more details of how the CI/CD and etc. all those work, you might need to check my next course, which will discuss in detail about all of those. But let's assume we are doing it manually now. So once he pushes to master, from there, from the studio, you will set up your Nexus Artifact Repository, which server, username and password. Since you are moving it to QA, so mostly you will use the snapshot repository. So he will right click on the job and he will publish it to the Nexus Artifact Repository. So the job now sits in the artifact repository as a zip file, which will contain the source, compiled code and libraries or jars and everything that needs for that job to run. Once it is there, you will go into Talend. You will log into the Talend Administration Center for QA. You will have one for development, one for QA, one for production, depending on how many environments you have. So the lead will log into the QA tag, and he will create something called task. So the task is nothing but whatever artifact repository item you have here. He will connect. So again, there are different types of tasks. There is a normal task, which you will create on top of the Git items, artifact tasks, which you will create on artifact repository. So going forward, this is deprecated. Creating a task on top using Git, it is deprecated. So Talend recommends you to create tasks on top of artifacts stored on artifact repository. So you will create the task, or the lead will create the task. Then he will schedule it. Since it's QA, you might schedule it, or maybe you will run it manually, or however your company's policies are. He will test them there in the QA, and once the results looks good, once the business says okay, results look good, we are ready to move it to production. So what then the lead, or if you have another team who does that, you will let them know. Then what they will do is, again you will log into the studio. Now since this is all manual, you have to do it from the studio. You will log in there, and this time you will set up the Nexus repository to point it to production instead of QA, and you will publish it to a release. So most of the time the Nexus repository you use for QA and production are same. For QA you will publish it to snapshots repository. For production you will use a release, so you don't have to change the Nexus settings in the studio. All you have to do is tell it to publish it to the release instead of snapshots. That's what happens. You will publish it to release, and again after that you will log into Talend Administration Center. Again you will create tasks which will be pointing to the release repository instead of snapshots. Then you will create tasks, you will schedule them, and that's how it all goes. So if you look at it, the important things are these: studio, browser, and tag. And these are one-time setups, which are Git and artifact repository, and this you won't even see. Admin database is not there to meddle with. You will only use it while creating it. That's it. You won't even know that even exists. So that's how the entire Talend architecture is, how it works in real time. So as I said, the CI/CD, you might implement it in your project or you might not. If you implement CI/CD, the publishing is taken care by the CI/CD. So how the CI/CD works is, as we discussed, there is another API, something called command line, that we will discuss in detail when the command line section comes. So I know there is a lot of information here, but watch this again and again until you understand what is the role of studio, browser, tag, artifact repository, Git, and execution servers, because those are the important things you should know either as a Talend developer or as a Talend administrator. So I hope it's clear. If you have any doubts, as I said again, you can ask me a question in the Udemy side, or you can ask me any question on the Skype. Thank you. See you in the next video.